Hi everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the Science and Technology Library section. Just a second. So today our webinar title is Text and Data Mining Work at Virginia Tech University Libraries. I'm Dr. Monica Lamba, and I'm the current chair of Professional Development Subcommittee and the elected committee member. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I would like to acknowledge the work of my team for putting this wonderful webinar together. I would like to provide some housekeeping information followed by an introduction to all the speakers. So firstly, you will notice that the session is recorded, and we'll be sharing the recording on our official IFLA section website, YouTube channel, and I will be sharing the link in a few seconds. So you can please go back to the recording if you want, if you miss any information or you want to review any other information provided during this webinar. Also, everybody who is a participant has their mics muted and their cameras off, but there are two ways that you can ask questions during the webinar. At the top of your Zoom function, there is a Q&A question, and so you can click on that and ask your question anytime. Feel free to put your question in there. And if we either have the question between the session or take it at the end. And you also can see the chat. So you can also use that chat function. In addition, that IFLA Science and Technology Libraries event page, you will provide additional information, and you have many more links for our social media. You can see on the screen. You can have our Facebook, Twitter, and the website. I've shared these links in the chat also. So let's get started. We have so many wonderful speakers today. So firstly, I will introduce Dr. N.M. Brown. She's the She's the assistant professor in research and informatics at University Libraries, Virginia Tech, and an affiliate faculty member in the Department of Biochemistry and Academy of Integrated Science. Second, we have C. Cosette Comer. She is the Evidence Synthesis Service Coordinator at the University Libraries at Virginia Tech. Thirdly, we have Dr. Kristen Miller. He is currently an assistant professor and the data and informatics consultant with data services of the Virginia Tech University Libraries. Then we have Nathan D. Porter. He is the data education coordinator and social science data consultant in the Virginia Tech University Libraries. And lastly, we have Michael J. Stamper. He is the data visualization designer and consultant for the digital art at the Virginia Tech. So I'll ask others to go ahead, and you can start your session.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Monica. I really appreciate it. And thank you for inviting us here. I think we're really happy to talk a little bit about text and data mining support and services that we offer at Virginia Tech. I'll just reiterate that we are open to questions throughout, so please do use that Q&A section and or the chat for comments. And we'll be happy. We'll have some time at the end of the session to address questions, but we can probably also take some timely questions as we go through. So I'm just going to get us kicked off here. My name is Cosette. I'm the Evidence Synthesis Services Coordinator at the University Libraries at Virginia Tech. So I do a lot of systematic review support. So those big comprehensive searches and then combing through just a ton of literature. And that's kind of where my interest for text mining and data mining comes into play. I got hired here as the evidence synthesis librarian in 2019, so it's been almost 4 years. One of the things that my supervisor was very supportive and encouraging of was getting folks to talk across the libraries about text and data mining services. It was both an opportunity for me to learn and also for us to get this conversation sort of flowing. So with that in mind, I will mention that several folks in this group, Nathaniel and Preston in particular, have been there since the first iteration of our modern, a lot of caveats here. Our first iteration of our modern text and data mining group across the libraries. And the reason that I have so many caveats is because this isn't a brand new thing. In fact, the entire initiative stems from a publication from 2017 that I was not part of, and to my knowledge, nobody else in our current group was part of, but all of the folks who, and I just added the link to the chat, all of the folks who authored this publication were really trying to understand more about what text and data mining offerings there are at libraries and how it can be leveraged and the type of support that we can provide at libraries. So this publication was the impetus for the groups, the conversations that we have across Virginia Tech University libraries. From there, we went through a few iterations. Again, not just through my guidance, but just through the collaborative efforts of a lot of folks here today, and then a lot more folks at our libraries. We have landed on a structure that we believe is very beneficial to the way that we are currently set up. This structure includes two main groups at the university libraries. They're both internal as of now, but we are planning on trying to expand a little bit further to include folks from the Virginia Tech community at large. So these two groups are a steering committee, which is made of 7 people. And so this is volunteer based, and many of those people are in this room now or have been part of that group before. We always want to make sure that there's representation from at least our research services, our data services, and our collections services. It might not come as a surprise to you that a lot of our representation does end up being from data services. Despite the fact that we don't have a full position that just focuses on text and data mining, we do have, we're very unique in the fact that we have a very robust service for data support. And so Anne, Nathaniel, Preston, and Michael are all part of that group. So they've been doing the text and data mining work. And in addition to that steering committee group, we also have a community of practice, because another big mission here was just having that conversation and making sure folks are aware of what kind of support we offer and can offer. And then also the learning aspect of it too. Also, I just realized that I didn't actually share that link in the chat to everybody. So I'm going to share this link right now. This is our charge. You're welcome to take a look at it. And then, oh, sorry, that's the same link. Here is that first publication from 2017 that was the impetus for our group development. Okay, so that's just kind of setting the stage, why we are all working together, why we want to keep talking about this kind of support, and how we functionally sort of do this at our libraries. The steering committee organizes community of practice events where we invite other folks across the university libraries to talk, and also at Virginia Tech, to talk about the types of work that they do and how text and data mining has been leveraged, the questions that they've had, the hurdles that they've had to overcome. And so that's going to be kind of some of the conversation points that we have today. With that in mind, I will go ahead and pass off the baton. But before I do that, I'm going to just give you a quick overview of what to expect this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, or evening. So I will pass it off to Nathaniel Porter, and then Kristen Miller and Michael Stamper will talk for a bit, and then Ann Brown will close us off. And then we'll move into a moderated Q&A session. And like I said, at the end of this session, we will have some time for your questions as well. Without further ado, Nathaniel, would you like to talk about your text and data mining project?
Thank you, Rosette. So I will get started, and let me just share my screen here for a second. So as I was introduced, I'm the social sciences and humanities data consultant here at Virginia Tech. My background is all over the place in terms of the kinds of data and things I work with. But one of the projects I had the opportunity to work on in close collaboration with a variety of faculty here and elsewhere, was this book called Viral Networks, Connecting Digital Humanities and Medical History. And so it was a multi-university collaboration with the National Library of Medicine, where people who were traditionally trained historians came together and learned to think and work with networks as data to answer historical questions and see sort of where that could go. And so the challenge that I'm going to discuss is for one of those chapters, although I'll show you how to get the whole book as well. It's how to turn this into this. So what is this? Lady dear, Margaret's letter from you yesterday suggests your eyes are not better, much better. I had hoped that the journey to Boston in January would reveal something definite and soon to be corrected. The second years are having their spring trimester examination. Yesterday was a practical in pathology. What is this? This is a letter from Esther Richards, an early American medical educator, one of the first female medical educators, to a colleague of hers. And it's part of a larger collection, which unfortunately now is only accessible using the Internet Archive. But there's 60 or so letters from a 17-year period between Esther Richards and Abby Turner. And they constitute this great archive of sort of understanding the day-to-day life of what it was like being these trailblazers. And you can see pieces come out. This is not just all about medicine. There's a lot of personal life stuff in here. There's how they interact with other people and so on. And the person I worked with, Catherine Cottle, was looking at these as sort of a way to get a view into the correspondence, but also this experience. And so using text and data mining, and I will walk you through the process here in a sec, but we extracted some topics, common topics and themes from these letters across them. And then we use network analysis to see how those topics are connected. So just even at the very surface level, you can see, and this is an interactive diagram. I can move these around and looking closer and things like that. The two most common topics, this one centers around home, and this one centers around doctor or their work life. And they're connected through these other things. So here's sort of a daily life one. Here's something about giving and sharing, making things better, and so on. And the network analysis allows us not just to pull out these topics, but to see how the different topics are connected. So how do we get from here to here? The first step is to collect the data. To do that, and the next step, I wrote a Python script working with the author, Catherine Cottle. If you're not familiar with Python and programming, don't worry too much. I'll just point out a few things here. The first step down here was to, in fact, download the data. And so in this case, they were all structured. Their URLs where they were located was structured in a similar way. I was able to write something that pulled them down. You know, I could have actually just gone and downloaded each of these. I could have right-clicked and saved the letter itself. The way I did it put in some extra checks and balances and made it so it could be automated and documented. And then from there, I used what's called, and I'll turn off of this. I'll just go back to the diagram because it's cool. I used a process of topic modeling called latent Dirichlet allocation. I think Creston may probably talk about that more in a little bit, but essentially what it does is it treats each letter as a collection of words and looks at the frequency of those words across letters relative to each other and finds collections of words that tend to occur frequently in the same documents or the same letters. this kind of text and data mining gives you a rich opportunity to extract without sort of presuppositions about the structure of the data, to inductively find what these topics are. Now, the challenge is these don't come with labels. And in fact, they don't even come with these neatly defined sets of words. You sort of have to go back and pull out, okay, what are the most heavily weighted, most important words connected to this topic? To do that, once I had run the latent Dirichlet allocation, I used a free site called wordclouds.com. It's actually the old version called Classic Word Clouds. And you can upload a word list from a CSV file that has weights, so how frequently they are. So I exported that from my script, uploaded them here. I used these tools up here to tell it how many words I wanted, to adjust the colors, the shape, and so on, so it was easily readable, exported those as images, and then used a program called Cytoscape, which this is an interactive version of the diagram I made in Cytoscape. It doesn't have all the options of Cytoscape. It's a network analysis software. It's free. There's some information on it in the book. And so each of these lines here in the diagram is weighted by how strong the connection between those topics are, how much they tend to co-occur. I was able to import the images for each of these, and I can sort of move them around, but you can also lay them out based on, for example, here, if I do, this is going to automatically lay them out based on how strong the connections are between each other. The reason I had them laid out a little bit differently is just for ease of viewing. And I created a final diagram I was able to export, but also we've shared the data files and the source data and everything, so you can go in and play around with this interactive one, see what the data look like, and so on. Once we'd done that, we were on to the book. And so there is freely available. Here's the book. It's at Virginia Tech Publishing. I can put the link here in the chat as soon as I pull the chat up. Hold on, everyone. Okay, so there's the book if you want to look at it. And I encourage you to look through all of the chapters. They're all sort of different approaches to people who are not traditionally data scientists or network analysts using network analysis to tackle humanities questions. There's also a chapter at the end that I wrote on sort of how to get started using data and network analysis and a glossary of network terminology. There also is an archive of the data, which I'll put a link to there, which has an HTML version, an index that you can sort of loop through the chapters. So for example, here's the chapter we were looking at. Here's the final image we used in the chapter for this, but it's also, the chapters will also have data and code and projects, so you can play around with them yourself. So I won't spend a lot longer on this. I'm glad to take questions, but the important things here, I think in terms of learning, as people in the libraries, if you can have people who have enough expertise to sort of help get started, it can enable faculty members to do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do, and do a lot of it themselves. Like I ended up writing the Python script to do the topic modeling, but the working with the network data once it was created, the software is very intuitive, it's free, it's something you can sort of play around with and ask questions yourself. Really not only enables capturing something unique about the letters more than just counting words and doing a word cloud overall, or reading through and doing close analysis, but also allows communicating that data in a succinct way that gives us more information than just what's there. Also, I hope you take away from this the importance of using open source and free things when possible and sharing the information so that others can learn to do similar things. So with that, I think I will pass it along, and I believe next is Creston and Michael.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Creston Miller here, and my colleague, Michael. Let me go ahead and start my screen share. Okay. Okay, is people able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So, let's see, yeah, Creston Miller, Michael Samper here. We're going to talk about a project called Seeing Flavors. This is about analyzing whiskey reviews that were available online. I will be first talking about the TDM part, and then Michael at the end will be talking about the visualization work that was done on this project. So to start us off, what is this project? This is a collaboration with food scientists. There's Dr. Jacob Lahn there and his student, Leah Hamilton, now Dr. Hamilton. And so what they were interested in doing is objectively describing the flavors of food and beverages. So this is normally done by training a panel of human experts, which is a painstaking task, takes a lot of time. And the research question that this project had was, can we use natural language processing, NLP, to find objective descriptions from existing published text? And this is data that's on the web that is free form text. It's not structured, which adds a little challenge to it. And so what is desired from this is to create a flavor lexicon, which is a structured set, a dictionary of sensory terms per product. And this is used throughout the food world for many different purposes. And as I mentioned earlier, constructing such lexicons relies on human labor normally, panelists. So then we asked the interesting question, does human language have flavor? Since developing lexicons relies on a group of people, but humans do this in other places. People discuss different aspects of food and read blogs and cookbooks and wine reviews, and this full descriptive language that can be very unique for these products. And so we looked at developing a computational method to identify descriptive language. And these are unique terms that describe a specific product. And we would like to basically be able to build these flavor lexicons without the need to train human subjects. So our then student, Leah, was able to scrape around 8,000 free-form text reviews from, I think, 4 different websites. And in order to create a machine learning algorithm to determine which word is the descriptor or not, we needed what's called a training set, something that the model can train on and give examples for what is and what is not. And so we created a little interactive JavaScript program that uses word clouds actually, and it provides a number of different words based on high frequency. And a user, in this case, these were food scientists, would go through and click ones that were and were not descriptors. And we used several different coders. We required just a couple hours of work and then this is the gold part. It created a handmade human annotated training set, which is can be very challenging in the machine learning world to have. And so it was wonderful we were able to do this so quickly. And so because we were able to tag this, like I said, it created a training set. And so what this training set did was it collected terms that were and were not descriptors. And then we could look up where those terms were in our data set and get the context. What came before, what came after. And so then we can map this representation to a numerical representation. And machine learning algorithms like numbers. So we have to convert things to numbers. Thankfully, there's something called word embeddings. This is where it takes text data, specifically at this case at the word level, and maps it into a high dimensional space, normally 100 to 300 dimensions. Yeah, try visualizing that. That's challenging. And basically in this vector space, two words that are closer to each other have a higher conceptual relationship. They have maybe closer meaning. So such as king and queen have a similar idea of a monarchy. Okay, and so we're able to take this representation and we have a nice little diagram of our architecture of a deep learning model. You don't have to worry about the details of that. I put it in here for completeness, but we did use a deep learning approach that uses long short-term memory approaches in deep learning, which basically works on sequences in data, which words in a sentence are sequences, have relationships. And so then we're able to train on a training set using this architecture. And then at the end being like, is it a descriptor or is it not? So this is part of one of the results that we got, this nice glob. But this glob actually has a lot of meaning. We took our trained model and we applied it to every word in the data set that was not part of the training data set. And we see, okay, what is and is not a descriptor in this unlabeled data? And we used a technique called the T-SNE that takes high dimensional data and maps it onto a 2D space so we can visualize it. So this is where visualizing high dimensional data comes in. And so what we see is we have roughly two clusters. And one of these clusters, the blue circles, is not labeled as non-descriptors, and the brown X's labeled as descriptors. So the model was able to take this conceptual space of our words in our data set and pull out what areas of the data is actually meaningful for whiskey reviews. Now, there are a few speckles in there, which I'll get to in a moment. And so this was a very fascinating result because it showed that the model was learning the language of describing whiskey, what is pertinent. So if we zoom into one of these speckled spots, and we can see that this little section is talking about different types of land formations or like tropical and things like that. So we see like in the top left, earth and sea and seas are seen as unique descriptors that are relevant, but things close to it, ocean, coasts, not as much. This is the challenge with trying to decide what is a descriptor and what is not, is being able to pull apart these relationships that are meaningful for the domain. So I'm going to have a short little demo here of the results. Now, what we're going to see is a short video where someone is typing in a review. This is all in real time, and the model is being applied to each word as it's being typed. And so you can see as it's highlighting, it's like, okay, these are descriptors and these are not. And it's interesting, you can see it start highlighting something and then it says, nope, that's not one. And most of the time it does a really great job of identifying these. There's maybe like one in here. Yeah, fade. I don't think it's really a descriptor. It might be. Let me get back to very end. Oops, my apologies. Just want to freeze frame at the end. There we go. So this was able to pull out this these descriptors and in real time. And excuse me. And we thought this worked great. It was wonderful, these results. We got a nice publication out of it. So let's see. Oh, yes. Next part, I believe, is Michael. So let me do a quick little paraphrase here. So we were able to take all this text, do some processing for it, create the label data set, get the train the model, and then apply it to data, and then it just shows that we're able to make a model that learns this language. And so I know in a TDM stance, this is a little involved. It did take a lot of Python programming, but with a team, it was possible. And so now with Michael, he's going to show some of the cool visualization parts that he worked on.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, I'm going to just show maybe just a few visualizations. So this will go kind of quick. But first, my role in this project is as a visualization information designer. So when I come in to the project, all the data is scraped. It's put in these nice Excel sheets and passed off to me to work with. So I don't have to do any of the programming or finding the sources or cleaning the data. So when I get it, it's nice and clean, and then I can drag and drop it and sort it and categorize it and figure out possible nifty ways to visualize it. So at this stage of the project, sorry, I don't think we had a clear idea of how this data could be visualized. So a lot of it is a lot of testing and just playing and seeing what might make the the data meaningful or be able to be digested by various audiences. So when I get the data, which we can see on this slide, you can see that it's been categorized into these nice columns. And I think the description column is highlighted because I think that's kind of where some of the descriptors were pulled from. So those are the full descriptions. So some of the things that I do with it, again, I'm just trying to create different options for the subject matter experts, which is Creston, Jacob, and Lay of this project. And, you know, I pretty much play with the data and see what I can come up with and see if anybody goes, oh, wow, that's cool. Let's go dig further this way. Or not, it might be complete garbage. No. And so I think one of the most low-hanging fruits, you know, when you get oh, next slide, sorry. Thank you. So one of the low-hanging fruits or tools to use when you're presented with like this big data set, that's like in these nice clean columns that we saw in the previous slide, is, you know, I'm going to drop it into Tableau. And just start playing with the different categories and columns and seeing what different types of visualizations we can come up with, and see if anything is interesting or worth digging in further into. So here's some nice nifty little bar charts. And there's one, some of the reviews had, or some of the whiskeys that were reviewed, you know, they come from different countries. And so we can plug in the geolocations of those and see if there's anything worth digging into. You know, some of this, again, it's not wasted work, but it might not be relevant to pushing the project forward. And so that's kind of the point of doing the visualization work for this. But yeah, one of the, down in the lower left is a book if you're interested in looking at doing different visualization projects and people adding like some artistic creative flair to data. I highly recommend that. Information is Beautiful book. And plus it'll give you a break from looking at the data like on the previous slide. So let's go to the next slide. So this is kind of similar to, I think Creston used the technical term of glob of data in one of his previous slides. So this is a glob, a big mess of spaghetti of data descriptors and how they are connected. So in Creston's version, I think he had blue circles and brown X's. And in this one, it's a bit more, it's kind of taking more of a macro view. So we're zoomed way out and we can see these different clusters and connections from far out. And, you know, if there's one's larger than the other, again, I'm talking about the big glob on the left. If there's a particular cluster that you want to dig in further, you know, we can take that out and kind of isolate it and kind of take a micro view of it and see what's going on there. See if there's anything interesting that you might want to dig in further. But this was created with a freeware program called Gephi. It's been around for quite a while, and I think they stopped developing on it. But it's still around, it works, and it's still very useful and has a pretty low learning curve to it. But this is also combined, it also exports as SVG, so SVG files that you can put into a program such as like Adobe Illustrator, and, you know, and go in and grab those clusters and isolate them, pull them out, and take a look at what's going on within the data. And at the top, the more spreadsheets, you can see going from that main data set, the clean data that was on 2 slides ago. We're able to take that, copy paste, put them in the format that Gephi can read, and you can create these visualizations that we're seeing right now on screen. So it's kind of like the artistic, visual, creative side of doing data analysis, text analysis. It's the fun. Well, I don't know. Sorry. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for listening. Next, I believe, is Anne.
Yes.
Let me stop sharing here.
All right. So everyone, thank you, Nathaniel and Creston, for telling us about your projects. I'm going to tell you all about one more project that we've worked on at university libraries. And I'm going to kind of start this with a different technique that we use in my group. I'm more of on the science informatics side. And we use undergraduate students to perform undergraduate research in our group to help with consults across the university that we're performing in data services at Virginia Tech. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we utilize undergraduates to do some of this work and research and how it has helped support us in terms of conceptualizing text data mining and work on some of these projects. And then one of the really cool projects that we got to work on involving antimicrobial resistance. And so the program that I run in university libraries is called Data Bridge. Data Bridge is a student undergraduate research program that focuses on training students in data science skills, basic research literacy, digital literacy, and more, to then have them able to complete independent projects that we are working on in the libraries in collaboration with others across the university that has requested services from our data services unit. The students are then paired with a project and also a peer student as well. And we kind of have a setup where we have weekly meetings, we have weekly updates that the students go through, and we have a whole training program that anyone can join our group regardless of their major. While we do have more students come to us that are in this computer science, our data science program at Virginia Tech is called CMDA, Computational Modeling and Data Analytics. We do have students from other engineering disciplines, and we have had students from things like political science join our group as well to learn about data science and how they can apply it as part of an active learning kind of experience. And so we have this set up so that students are able to earn undergraduate research credits via us at the university libraries faculty. And they're able to then work on projects as possible and as on their interests, and what projects come in the door as consults. So like you heard from Nathaniel and Creston, that we have different individuals come to us across the university for help in a variety of projects, some of those text data mining related. We're able to now use in my group students to help perform that work and really have an embedded buy-in on that project and have outcomes both on the research side and on the educational side. And so students in our group act as the consultant and the problem solver. They do analysis, they visualize, they collect data, they have to clean the data as well, which is not always a fun thing that they learn, but I would have to say cleaning data is one of the most meaningful things that students can learn to do because it's so essential to the problem. But we have them kind of work through this whole figure of the research process for them to be able to work on different projects that we have. And we also use text data mining in here as well, because we want to be able to meet those requests of clients coming to us in data services. And so we had a request come to us let's see, this must have been 2019, right before everything happened. And they wanted to have a diverse group of individuals. We had faculty from civil engineering, public health, and other universities, including in University of Maryland and the USDA, working on this project to understand antimicrobial resistance with a One Health perspective. And so they came to us with some research questions and wanting ideas of how they could go about doing this kind of research project. And as you heard with the Whiskey Project, language is very important in text data mining. And so one of the things that this research group wanted to study was from 1990 to 2019, does antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, associated language increase at similar rates among each of the One Health domains? So in humans, in animals, and environment, are we seeing continual uptake of this kind of research and language use in each of the domains? And then they couple that with the question of, are there similarities within the literature related to antimicrobial resistance in regards to the language used? So are we pretty diverse in our language across the domains, or is there a certain domain within One Health, like environment, for example, that likes to use a certain set of words and phrasing, which we might not typically use in other groups as well? So how can we start to kind of combine these forces together to have more of a common language that we're using in all of these perspectives of One Health that can influence antimicrobial resistance? And then lastly, we wanted to look at language frequency trends. So is there any kind of trend among open access or non-open access publications with respect to antimicrobial resistance, and relate that to the One Health domain as well? So we had these research questions. We had a lot of questions ourselves of how we could start to do this, but we developed a plan in order to be able to do this. And so one of the biggest things we had to utilize was open access articles, so that we could search both titles and abstracts and keywords for all the journal articles that we could get within that time period that I noted that had a relationship to antimicrobial resistance and One Health. We worked with other librarians in university libraries to develop our search strings. And we then utilized a plugin that uses EuroPMC to pull out in JSON files the abstract and associated information with the papers that we were able to retrieve. We then used some natural language processing to analyze the results both across the entire data set, but also within the domains that we searched related to One Health. So if it was environment focused, animal focused, human focused. And so we were then able to do some visualizations on that and get some suggestions for moving forward to broaden the use of One Health in how we use language to discuss antimicrobial resistance. And so the program that we used to do this was called Content Mine. It uses the EuroPMC database, and we were able to then create a data lake of 1.2 million articles. From there, we thought, wow, this is overwhelming in terms of the amount of information. It is giving us a lot of noise, even taking out stop words and things like that. So we went with a randomization process then to then pull 2,000 articles out of that subset per year of each of the years from 1990 to 2019 for each of the then 4 bins of One Health. So we had environment, animal, humans, and just One Health broadly mentioned as a keyword in that article. So then we were able to then bump that up again, pull 5 more random articles from that 1.2 million again to have a truly random source, and then perform text data mining on that to see what kind of language trends were present across the different subsets of articles that we had, and in the individual silos as well. We further coupled that with a non-open access approach as well, just to kind of have a comparison marker. And we used EBSCOhost for that. We focused on the Journal of Dairy Science because we had to do more of a manual review here. Non-OA becomes very difficult to do text data mining on, and we want to make sure we're following all rules and requirements. And so with an expert in this field, we did a manual review and we're able to see different articles that fell into different domains that at least had a spread across our One Health areas of interest. From there, we were able to evaluate everything and we were able to determine keywords. Some things that might not seem like a big deal became a big deal, where certain fields were using antibiotic resistance rather than antimicrobial resistance. So when searching for articles, if you're using one of those terms instead of both, you're going to get very kind of more siloed information and miss out on bigger picture stuff that's happening across the One Health domain related to antimicrobial resistance. We also saw improvements and made some suggestions in our paper for how we can improve the keywords and how we can start to get more of a common language amongst all the domains to, at least in keywords, start using AR or antibiotic resistance in addition to other words, so that we can start to have more of a crossover and broader search. When researchers are going out and finding information related to this, they are able to have more variety in the impact that they have. And so we have that. And so the really cool output of this was that we did publish a paper on this called Finding What is Inaccessible: Antimicrobial Resistance Language Use Among the One Health Domains. And this was a very collaborative piece that we were able to put through. And the cool thing here is that our student that worked on this project and did some of the data mining and data parsing and analysis is also an author on this paper. So that's a huge win, because now we were able to help our researchers and come up with a method that we were able to do text data mining on for this project and answer some of their initial questions. But in the missions of libraries, we're also able to contribute to the educational goals as well, and involve students in this process to see kind of what is next and see what it's like to really work on an interdisciplinary project like this. So I encourage any of y'all, if you're interested in this work or this paper, it is also open access, and you're able to take a look at that and see some more of our findings. And so what we learned from this really was, as librarians ourselves and working in the university libraries as the consultants on this project, we had to familiarize ourselves with the domain and really start to understand how siloed One Health can be based on the 3 different subcategories of it, and how we had to have contextualization about that so that we had enough background going in so that we were informed. It was also very critical for us to engage our subject matter librarians so that we could get the best search strings and keywords as possible for the articles that we were able to pull. So we also were able to take into account here in this project how having our clients that we were working with have questions at the get-go, so that it wasn't more of just kind of a random search to be able to get this project together, but streamlining those questions at the onset of what kind of goals we wanted to get from this project in collaboration made our outcome possible in a timeline that was within 2.5 years to get this all together. Other things that were necessary is, leveraging the students really helped us get the work done. And it gave a very, very high quality experience to a student as well, that they're able to put on their resume. They have a paper from this, and they have workforce experience as well. Both working with individuals, we include students on all of the collaboration meetings and make sure that we are able to kind of also let students explore as well. Because having a non-biased student come onto the project that's not necessarily in One Health lets them kind of uncover unexpected trends in the exploratory phase of this project, so we could see what kind of questions can we really answer. So those are some lessons learned. We always want to be careful too about making sure that we are following all of our rules with text data mining. And I think that's our biggest concern as well. So using Content Mine was super useful for us to use OA articles and do some searching on that. All of this then gets towards our bigger program of Data Bridge. We have other projects now that we can point to that we had this success for students, and students have used this to make dashboards and other kinds of projects where we teach other students about the utility of data. And we also have an open science framework page for this project as well, because we're able to then discuss open science and open data with the students and help create a culture of how we can start doing research better in the future. So I think it's a lot of wins, and it's nice to really see the groups grow and the students appreciate this as well. That's everything I've got for y'all. I'm happy to talk about questions and things like that, and I'll turn it back over to Cosette.
Thank you so much, Anne. And thank you to everybody. I think that this sort of information is really beneficial especially for folks who are just kind of starting to get their feet wet with text and data mining. So now that we've seen some of the applications, we're going to move into our moderated Q&A session. So I'm going to share my screen just to keep everybody informed of the questions as they go through. I'll also note that we did not get any questions that I found through the chat or the Q&A. So I'm just going to, another encouragement of ask your questions when you have them. Please don't feel the need to hold them to the end. And we will have a section for your Q&A as well. With that in mind, we'll go into the moderated Q&A section. Thank you, panelists, again for your presentations and also for popping your videos back on. I'm going to ask that we take maybe about 3 minutes per person to answer each of these questions. That should put us in a good space to have a few minutes left over for questions. So the first one is pretty simple, and I don't think anybody actually covered this in their introductions. So just a brief overview of how you started using text and data mining. And why don't we start with you? We'll go in reverse order of the presentations.
Yeah, so happy to answer this. So how did I start using text data mining? Well, we started to see an increase in requests from clients. And so that leads us to problem solving. And in problem solving, we thought, all right, I'm roughly familiar with this. Luckily for us, university libraries in maybe 2017-ish had Content Mine come out to us and do a workshop one day. And I had that in the back of my head of like, hey, maybe we can use that for this project or purpose, because I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of hesitant to do some text data mining because I do not want to get us in trouble with any publisher or anything like that, or get removed or do anything. So I'm very cautious. And so having this avenue to use Content Mine and have a solution that could have been feasible was how we kind of got started with it. And from there, it was like, all right, now we can really start to get into this. I've got a handle on this. I have a workflow, I have some success, and now we can move forward. And so that's kind of how we got started.
And Michael, why don't you take the next, and then Preston and then Nathaniel.
Whoops, there we go. Thanks. Well, I actually don't. So, my clients usually, my clients do the hard part of the text and data mining. And, you know, if they need help presenting it or visualizing it, then that's when I can come in and assist. Sorry, that's done. I am done.
Nope, that's perfect. And thank you for clarifying that.
Being honest.
Okay, for me, it's very similar to Anne's situation. Is we have no patrons and clients and whatnot who come to the library, and they have different needs. And so there was Dr. Long, Jake Long, who came to us looking for a collaborator, and he wanted someone with text and data mining experience. And so at that point, I had a little bit of experience, and I had a couple of projects, smaller projects before that. Basically, it came down to, I have a request. Well, let me see about this and learn something along the way. And so a lot of it was a learned out necessity, which actually was a good thing, because I learned so much and was able to expand the support that our group can provide. And yeah, that's how we got started.
I guess that makes it me. So I came at text and data mining the other way. I came at it through my own needs. So I started in sort of network science, social network analysis, but I was working for a data archive at the time, and we were doing projects on how we could measure religion differently. They had a project where they wanted to collect data on the books that were bought together online, somewhere like Amazon.com, and look at how different religious groups or types of books were connected. And I thought, hey, that's cool. I'll volunteer to play around with that. Somebody else wrote a script to pull the web data down and do the web scraping and things like that. And then they promptly graduated, and the website promptly changed how their website was set up. And so if I wanted to continue to do this, I had to learn how to deal with the scraping part myself and program, and work with, to some level, text and data mining. It wasn't the same type of thing because I was primarily trying to get structured data out of this. There were bits and pieces of text, but it gave me the skills to get started looking at this and think about it from a network perspective, which is how I usually come to it. And that has served me well, especially in these squishier projects, where you're not necessarily trying to answer a question that you know, but trying to understand a body of work.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I do just want to leave a comment here about, you know, being involved in text and data mining support. Michael and I think probably have a more similar experience. We're kind of on the periphery a bit, not doing the mining itself. But that's another way that you can kind of get started if you are looking to from the library perspective, be on a text and data mining team. For example, I helped a group in the statistics department, collaboration with sociology and computer sciences, get access to material to mine, right? Still very important, and brought that up as a hurdle, but maybe not doing the actual mining itself. And Michael, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to add in?
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, it is just what you said. We are part of the research process, but yeah, doing in the supporting role, it is nice to be able to free up time for the clients that come to us or patrons clients and patrons that come to us so they can focus more on their research while we help take care of like other facets of the project that might need a little bit more help that they don't have the expertise in. So yeah, it is nice to be part of all these different projects and be able to assist in that way.
Great. Thank you.
Can I jump in for a sec and just add before we go on to the next question to what
Go
Michael
ahead,
said,
Daniel.
to say that one thing, and I think is in common across all of us, is that collaborative aspect is really critical in these text and data mining projects because they tend to be big and difficult to get a handle on one thing. And so when you have collaborators who have different kinds of expertise, some have substantive expertise, some have methodological or programming or whatever, it really allows you to explore things that are really hard to get started on. And maybe once you get started, you learn more about the other parts, or maybe not, and you continue to collaborate. That's such a critical part of any successful venture here.
Yeah, and a super important theme. I don't think any of you suggested doing text and data mining work on your own. So thank you for bringing that to light.
There's a question in the Q&A.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right, well, we can, before we hop into our next one, we'll
Can everybody see that?
yeah.
Can everybody see the question?
It looks like everybody on the panel can
Yeah,
at least.
I can.
So I can read it, and then maybe
Okay.
if anybody wants to answer.
Sure.
So one participant pointed out they're colorblind, and most of the visualizations and highlighting was not visible to them. So do all of these softwares or tools, or I'm just going to add in, or any of them have a grayscale accessibility option?
Some of them do. Like a Tableau has like special color palettes that, you know, there might be a grayscale one in there, but other ones are, you know, making sure that contrasts are different enough between colors, if colors are used. There are also, if we need to like custom create the colors and check, that's something that you can manually do in something like Adobe Illustrator, or where you can check the colors either through a preloaded palette specifically for the ADA disability, or you can check the colors using like a browser-based tool.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. So almost every tool I've encountered that does visualization has ways to customize the color palette you're using and set them up. It varies the degree to which it's simple. So you saw I customized the word clouds to be grayscale. In the diagram I did, that was part of the word clouds tool. I use R a lot for data visualization, and there are grayscale options as well as colorblind friendly palettes that are for people who are partially colorblind but not entirely, that help make things easier to see. But there is a varying degree of work you'll have to put in to do that, and there are limitations. So if you're trying to use symbols, for example, instead of colors to indicate things, and you're working with a network diagram that has 10,000 points on it, it gets very, very busy and hard to see the differences between those symbols without colors. So you're really limited to the number of colors you can use to really bring it out in grayscale. And it is something to think about.
Yeah, it's a great question. But yeah, I'm also going to add that sometimes when you're doing the visualizations and people need to see the differences, we have to add sometimes add texture to different categories, which is a lot of manual and customized work. But yeah, it's been a problem since you know, visualization started, I guess.
I like to just jump in real quickly. That now I realized, let's see, in one of the visualizations I had, I used the actual Tableau palette in the process of using not just color, but also glyphs. So I had circles and X's that kind of help differentiate. And I realized in my little live demo highlighting thing that was made back in the day when I was not as well aware of such things. So my apologies for that. And so, but yeah, that's one thing that I try to do is, you know, using the different what is it, shapes and colors and different ways of mapping meaning to the visualizations.
And one last little comment is this is actually something we also talk and teach our students as well, because we want them to be aware of accessibility and visualizations. And we typically have them go look at Adobe color palettes, and we have them do a figure test using colorblind filters on it as well. So it's a great learning place for students as well. So I highly encourage you to bring these topics up and discuss it with students.
Great question. Thank you so much for asking. I'm glad that the panelists could get to answer that. Keep the questions coming, but until then, I'll move forward to the next planned question. And I think it's kind of relevant here to the last conversation. So what is the biggest hurdle, or if there's several, please don't feel limited to only selecting one. What is the biggest hurdle you've faced in using text and data mining? And if it's applicable, how do you overcome this hurdle? And if you haven't overcome it, that's okay too. We should talk about that. So do we want to start in the opposite order we did before? So Nathaniel, would you like to lead us off?
Sure. So I have had, I'll point out two big hurdles. The first big hurdle I came up when I first started doing text and data mining was I didn't know how to program, and I didn't have someone handy to do the programming for me after that fellow student graduated and moved on. I really recommend for that, finding a program, a way to learn basics of programming in a language that's relatively accessible. Don't try and learn Java or C++ or something to start, but something like Python or R that you can sort of read on the surface. I'll put a link in later to curriculum at the Carpentries, which is an international nonprofit that I'm involved in that does a lot of training for novices who have never programmed before. That all the curriculum is free and available online. There's also sometimes online workshops you can join. But the second piece is interpreting data, because you get so much data. And even if I use a tool like the topic modeling I used in this example, you still have to make sense of the topics or the visualizations or things that come out. And there's no manual for that. There's no like hard and fast, like, okay, here's the 5% cutoff. I say this is significant, this is meaningful, I've got my hypothesis, I'm done. Much more often it's a much more inductive interpretation process, which I'm still learning to be more comfortable with, having come from a quantitative side. And I think the best solutions are to play around with your data and go look at what other people have done with similar situations, how people have talked about things, interpreted things, find examples that look kind of similar to what you've done, and work through that there to get inspired. Also talk to other people and show the diagrams to other people who don't know what's going on. Try and explain it to them. They'll see it, they'll be confused, you'll try and explain, and either they'll still be confused or they'll start to understand something. They might even have insights you don't.
Yeah, I guess that comes to me. Actually come from a different side than Nathaniel. I am a computer scientist and I have a lot of technical training, especially with Python. However, my background before I started working in TDM was was not TDM. And so a big hurdle was learning a lot of these technical things with TDM for patrons on my own. I didn't take any classes, generally speaking. And so I just had to take the time to learn it myself and ask questions to other colleagues. And so, yeah.
All right, is it me? Maybe. Well, I'll go. So I would say the biggest hurdle for us is research utilization. What are we allowed to mine or not? Quality of those sources and getting it into a format of which we actually can do some mining on. I hazard more on the being careful and cautious of resource utilization. And so that I would say is one, but I'd also like to echo some of the things Creston and Nathaniel have said, especially because things are continually evolving and updating in this area. Large language models, natural processing, all that kind of thing is continually updating. So you kind of have to stay on top of things to know what is relevant or what is not. And sometimes we have to also ground ourselves back in just the standard research processes, making sure that the results that we get also pass the does it make sense test, or are we actually kind of getting more noise into our results, and making sure that we're truly thinking through our results and just not accepting what trends pop out as the most relevant, making sure that rationalization is present. And those are ours. For overcoming them, the content mine was super useful for us because I knew we would be using open access and we wouldn't be breaking any rules or things like that. And so that was super helpful, and it gave us file formats that were easy to code for and work with. So that's my one thought there. I know there are a lot of other programs out there, but with so many tools out there, sometimes you just have to go with what's comfortable to you.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, everyone. I think this is so true. And I kind of just want to highlight something, Anne, that you brought up is the quality of the research portion. And I'll go ahead and answer this question myself too, because that is one of my biggest fears in applying it to evidence synthesis. Large language models are really good at speeding up the answering process of getting an answer to your question. But something that not even, we always take into consideration in a standard, for example, standard literature review, is the quality and the risk of bias of the material that you're synthesizing or you're drawing those answers from. So I think that that's something that more so the community is maybe perhaps grappling with. So we've already mentioned a few, but what is your favorite text and data mining tool or resource? And maybe rewording this a bit, what tool or resource would you suggest somebody starts out with? And let's change up the order a little bit. Let's start with Creston, and then we'll go through the same presentation order.
Okay, this one I find a little tricky for me, is I heavily use Python to work with text, and some packages, Python packages main for it, like Spacey, GenSim, and NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit, and scikit-learn, a number of the Python ones. Now, to get started, something that could be a little bit easier learning curve is a program called Orange, like the fruit. And they have a plugin, it's a visual programming interface where you have little widgets that you can connect and everything, for kind of make a data workflow, if so to speak. And they have a plugin that works with text. And so it has some limited capabilities, but it can get you started. You can do nice word clouds and topic modeling, and you can do some sentiment analysis. And so that's, yeah, from my perspective.
I have to echo, Python is pretty nice and easy. I've mentioned it, and I'm not just trying to say this for any reason, but Content Mine did make our lives easier to get the resources that we needed. So I do like that, and it gave us an easy workflow. So that was one that we used. We have used Tableau for visualizations as well. That helped with some of it in terms of creating easy to use graphs and things like that. But otherwise, we kind of just see what's out there and what will fit the needs of the project and go from there. But I think Content Mine is going to be my biggest one because of getting the data for us for our project that we had.
All right. So I don't have necessarily super great starter recommendations either. I would echo that if you are thinking this might be a way you're headed, it is worth learning either Python or R. Python historically has been more flexible in terms of working with text data, doing text and data mining, doing machine learning. R has been more focused on statistics, but they're converging to some extent. I'm going to put, I said earlier, I was going to put a link to software carpentry for lessons for intro to Python and things like that. So I just did that. But there are, I would say, if you can find a network tool that allows you to pull in words or documents and work with them as they are, something like NodeXL, NodeXL, which is an Excel add-in. I think the free version allows you a fair amount of the functionality. That's for network analysis. Or I used Cytoscape, which I think is fairly straightforward. Michael used Gephi. Those are all free. They'll have lots of online tutorials for the network side. It's going to vary between them how much sort of pre-processing of the data you have to do to get it ready to use for specifically analyzing the text, and not just say that whatever the sources are or the tweets if you're doing that or something like that. But look around and find out what people who are doing things like what you're looking like have used, and then start asking questions.
Perfect. And Michael, not to put you on the spot, but are there any data visualization tools that you would recommend for folks getting started here?
Oh, well, it's already been mentioned quite a bit. I think Anne just did about, using whatever tool fits, because they're just, you have a lot of options now. But mainly what I look for, not only can it create a good foundational visualization, but what kind of files it can export is also very important. If it can only do flat image files like PNGs that don't have a high resolution, that's I kind of stay away from those. If it can export as EPS or SVG, awesome. Because if I can get it in that format, I can get the visualizations refined for wherever they need to be seen or interacted with. But yeah, you can add, as mentioned earlier, the question about the color blindness, or just creating color blind friendly visualizations. If it's a PNG, I really can't do much with it. If it's a vector shaped file, I can fix it easily. So yeah, having the option for modifying the visualizations is really important.
Thank you so much for adding in. Yeah, that's such a good point. We have one more question. And this is kind of similar to how I rephrased the last question, but I am just going to go ahead and ask it again more broadly. what recommendations do you have for library employees who are beginning to explore text and data mining? And Michael, let's start with you this time.
I would think talking to your colleagues and knowing their skill sets, at least in my realm of non-expertise in TDM, is making sure you have good team members and collaborators that can do the programming. But yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry, it's not like a cop-out and trying to be the person in the group project that doesn't do their share of work. But yeah, just making sure you have good colleagues that are experts at doing the TDM.
No, I think that's a perfect place to start, because that is where I've started, and that's where it kind of
Yeah, I mean,
starts.
my brain just does not do the programming or scraping the Python and code as well as my colleagues. So I always appreciate the skills and the expertise of those I get to work with or interact with. So
Same here. And with that in mind, let's go through Anne, Kristen, and Nathaniel.
Yeah, my recommendations is don't hesitate to have a big team. You know, it takes a little bit of work to have so many, you know, individuals working on something, but you all bring individual skills to the table. And so making sure that you're using all of your resources and having open communication and good project management will make any project in general work well. Relating that to text data mining is something that I think that has been very beneficial, Cosette, that you've really spearheaded, is having communities of practice. So just opening up the discussion of what are people doing, what's working, what's not working with any of your peers within the library or other departments. Just start that conversation. And then from there, kind of hone in on what you might be most interested in, because it is such a vast field. It can become very overwhelming, and kind of take it one step at a time. So that's my best advice. And follow different trends and papers and all that good stuff.
Okay, this I find this question a little challenging for me. As I'm a computer, like I said, I'm a computer scientist that's working in a library. I have to put myself in the librarian's shoes, thinking about what would be necessary starting from the beginning. And one of the things that came to mind as I was just thinking 3 minutes before the question was asked, was I mean, I was just looking up right now, text and data mining, like for beginners or something like that. And what came up, one specific one that came up was just going through and explaining different concepts. Like, okay, text and data mining, what is that? What are the pieces of it? And so you can start understanding one of the different aspects of this field. And as Anne was saying, then you can kind of start maybe finding what you find interesting. What is the part you want to learn more about? Specifically, you might have a project in mind. And of course, one that's going to echo the number of times that people said, talk to other co-workers, maybe reach out to someone in different department, college that is doing work like this. And so, yeah, and it's going to come back around. The web is a great resource for learning these things. Like I use Google search all the time, trying to understand, find out, okay, how do I solve this TDM problem? This is my current situation. So I'm gonna close out here and move on to the next person. Just give them some time.
Right. So echoing what a lot of people have said, find partners. I will add find partners where you can. We at Virginia Tech are a very well-resourced library as far as research and data support services. And I recognize that. I did not know that when I came here because I wasn't from a library background, but I very quickly learned as soon as I went to conferences with other librarians, and they're like, oh, like I handle all the data stuff half-time by myself. We don't have a team of 8 people to do it. But even in a less resourced environment, you may be able to find people, say, in a computer science department to partner with, or you know, people from another university who have interest in similar things, people who have worked on similar subjects. And part of that, you may draw on the knowledge of your collaborators, their clients, in terms of who else might be out there in their space as well that does that sort of thing. Also, if you want to start learning, work through existing examples if you can find them, where you've got sort of like the process and can see what happened, and start small. But don't be afraid to step outside of the like turnkey, out of the box type solutions. So some of the, you know, database providers and things are now offering text and data mining services and whatever. They're capable of doing some things that are interesting and useful, but they're always going to be limited by the databases they're tied to. They're always going to be limited by the particular approaches they chose to do things. And it's more useful, I think, to learn to think in text and data mining terms and say, how could we do this thing that we want to do? I would also recommend learning to code text by hand qualitatively as well, whether you're doing it like highlighting on a piece of paper or using a qualitative data analysis tool like NVivo or Deduce or Atlas TI or something like that. Learning what it's like to code textual data and will teach you what matters in terms of what you're trying to get out of that textual data. So for me, practicing that has really improved the quality of the workflows I can create and think about in text and data mining. Lastly, I'll caution, ChatGPT and everything are cool. And they will continue to look like they can get better and better at dealing with things like this for you. Don't just throw your data at some large language model like ChatGPT and assume that the output is good and meaningful and makes sense. There are ways you may be able to use them, especially as things continue to develop, to streamline your process. But at the end of the day, they are not humans who know how to interpret things. They are just not only boxes for processing data, but black boxes for processing data.
And just building off of that thread, they are also created by, those algorithms are created by humans using data that was created by humans. And so there's really no like objectivity, you know, workaround here, right? You're always going to have some kind of bias going into that process. Thank you for bringing that up. I will just say that one thing that hasn't been mentioned, if you are interested in taking some kind of training, well, I guess, Nathaniel, you did point out the carpentries, which I would highly recommend. Those have been instrumental in my own development into learning R. That was my program of choice. I will also mention that there are, you know, for example, the Leading Fellowship, which is geared specifically to library employees who are trying to increase their data analytics skills. Text and data mining is one of those areas, and I was a fellow, and that was my first foray into actually cleaning the data and mine in preparation for the mining and testing out some of these programs. So be on the lookout for those kinds of opportunities as well. We do not appear to have any questions. This is the last question on our prepared slide deck, and I'm not seeing any more Q&A questions just yet. So we do have about 30 minutes left. So maybe if I'll give it open floor while we wait for more questions. And if we don't get them in the next couple of minutes, we can decide how to move from there. But panelists, what did we forget? Is there any other tidbit that you'd like to share with the audience?
Ooh, I've got one. So you may have noticed when I was demonstrating the letters that it had little pane at the top of the website for the letter that said Wayback Machine. That's because the original source data is no longer online at the university website that hosted it. This is very common. So if you are doing text and data mining, one of the critical things we didn't mention, but even from the start, is making sure that you have backups and archival versions of everything you're doing. And there, you can download it all and put it on a drive somewhere that's shared. If it's, following licensing, all that. Check with your copyright people. You can use, what is it? It's not archive it. What is it? The Internet Archive's sort of capture service where you can create your own mini collection of captured web pages and things like that if you're doing it from the web. We also didn't talk about, optical character recognition and trying to text and data mining, things that are not natively digital, but that's an increasingly important thing that Preston can probably tell us more about if he wants, in terms of using sources that no one else has turned into text already.
Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel, for mentioning optical character recognition, OCR. It's because I've been working with OCR, different software packages, technologies, and everything for the past 3 years or so. And I've seen that not all packages of OCR are created equal. Either they're either free ones, open source, or paid. And so that is something to be very careful of. I mean, I know software such as Adobe Pro has it built in, and I've used that before, and it can struggle with certain kinds of images, scanned PDFs, that is. The best OCR I've ever seen is, I'm not paid by this company. I'm not here to endorse them, but John Snow Labs has a library called Visual NLP. It used to be called Spark OCR, and I'm working with them to try to get an academic license. We had a paid license and everything, and so they're changing how they do stuff. But if you can get a license, it's one of the best ones that I've seen. Otherwise, there are some open source options online. I can't, the name of some, it escapes me right now. But yeah, my take home message is be wary of the OCR software that you are using, and do a little research on it first.
Perfect. So, and we also have a question in the chat. Can you provide examples of libraries that have successfully implemented TDM principles and achieved notable results? And I would say that we've kind of covered, right? I think that this has been a great display of the type of work that Virginia Tech University Libraries has been engaged in. But other folks, do you want to address this question?
I mean, I think that the book that occasioned this panel has a lot of examples of that, pulling from not just Virginia Tech, but multiple different libraries. And if you're trying to search for that, looking for like digital humanities or virtual archives, things like that, often you can find some really neat examples of this kind of work. I don't have any like favorites I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can throw out there the iSchool at Washington State. I recall being pretty impressed with some of their services. They do quite a bit of technical kind of support. In fact, I think I'm not sure if this is out of the libraries, but I do think that they put together a grant opportunity in the past for technical analytics on text material, specifically with relation to like criminology and that sort of material. But Anne.
Yeah, I was going to echo what was already kind of said. I don't have anything else great to add, unfortunately. I think this is kind of a growing area, so don't be afraid to put your own stuff out there.
Absolutely. And again, with the theme of reach out, collaborate. If you see somebody doing something at another library that you'd like to explore as well, and I'd encourage you to try to network a little bit too. We got another question in the Q&A. So it's about the main reference that we recommend for learning text and data mining. And I think that the answer is there is not just one. But if folks want to maybe type in the answer that they gave, or perhaps we can organize a list of all the sources that we've already shared via chat with Monica, and she can follow up with the audience here. But I guess I would say Carpentries is a really good place to start looking into text and data mining training. All right, folks. Well, I will give one last call for more questions and for other comments from the panelists. So I think that we've covered quite a bit today, and I see our host is also here. So
thank you for everyone's time, and please, yeah, we have a little bit longer if you have any other questions. This is all great information. If there are no other questions, then I'll do a quick closing. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to share my screen just to provide information for everyone to know where they can get access to the recording. We will go ahead and post this to our IFLA SciTech. And let me know which screen you see. Do you see the PowerPoint? Okay, perfect. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. So we do have a couple different channels where we'll be able to post the recording, and I'll see if I can throw it into the chat as well, just so what the link is for you all to be able to capture this later. But we do want to say thank you to all of our panelists and speakers, and give us about a month to be able to post the recording to our SciTech channel, and you can review some of our webinars that we've done already in the past as well. And we've got some great information on our on the YouTube channel, as well as all of our other Twitter and Facebook page handles. So anything else? Any last question? Thank you again to all of our fantastic panelists. Big round of applause. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day, wherever you are and whatever time it is for you.